Make sure this one. We good? All right, welcome and good morning. Everybody enjoying the Central Ohio's ISSA's 9th Annual Information Security Summit? Yes? If you don't get a chance to make all the tracks, I want to take a quick call out. Adrian, before you run off, I want everybody to give a hand to Adrian for getting the videos up online in record time. You guys are awesome, Adrian. All right, so this morning's talk, putting the intelligence back in threat intel. How many of you have been hearing this threat intel buzzword going around the industry lately? A couple of us. How many of you have had vendors swoop in and they're like, buy my list of bad? And they're passing that off as threat intel. Anybody? So that's what we're going to talk about today, is putting the intelligence back in threat intel. So a little bit about myself. I'm co-founder and one of the principal consultants at Rendition Information Security. We put the think back into, or we changed we think to we know. I'm also a veteran of the United States Navy. Are there any other veterans in here? Gentlemen, ladies, thank you very much for your service. It's greatly appreciated. I'm also certified in stuff. I'm a certified information security manager. I'm certified in the governance of enterprise IT, risk and information systems control, and the ever fun-filled ISO 27001. Information security management, LI. I'm also an instructor and mentor, both with ISACA and within the industry. So enough about me. Oop. Hang on, technical difficulty here. There we go. So in order to have threat intelligence, you need to have intelligent analysis. This does not come from a tool. This comes from people behind the keyboards, monitoring, looking at, reviewing, assessing, and making a determination. The primary purpose is to provide information back to the business so they can make a decision on a course of action that they can take. So when we talk about threat intelligence, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. You've got the business executives. You have the core folks that are looking from security operations. They're looking for IOCs. Risk managers. Ways to address threats. Vulnerability management. The actual business units. Anybody in here that they have business units that travel overseas? Are they talking to us about what threats are that we're seeing when we're overseas? Should they be? Yes, absolutely. Our external partners that we're working with means something, a little bit something different to everybody else. Some of the common use cases for threat intelligence. Early warning. We can use it for strategic planning. How we're going to leverage that information during forming a new business partnership, during a merger and acquisition, capital expenditures, things that the business is normally concerned about. Using threat intelligence for competitive operations. Anybody in here have a competitor in their industry? Nobody? Oh, wow. Do you think that your business units are watching what your competitors are doing and adjusting for fire as accordingly? Absolutely. Finally, security and counterintelligence. Getting more into the technical side. So not only knowing what our competitors are doing, but also looking at what our adversaries are doing. Protecting our information and our intellectual property. Protecting our systems. So we deal with a lot of the fact that a lot of the vendors are pushing out these lists of bad. We've got a list of indicators of compromise. We have lists of bad IP addresses. We have known bad domains, but what does that actually convey to the business? Does that bring any additional value? So part of this talk and presentation came out of the fact of my frustrations. The list of bad. Buy our list of bad. A lot of vendors taking the cookie cutter approach. Fit inside this mold. Some of it came from folks not actually understanding the full capabilities of how threat intelligence could be applied within their organization. Not understanding that the threats that are out there are actually legitimate and real. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. Again, this attempt for one size fits all when it comes to threat intelligence. And the fact that a lot of people think that it takes a lot of money to be able to do threat intelligence. And there's some quick and easy wins that you can take within your organization. So what exactly is threat intelligence analysis like? Ultimately, it's like having a puzzle with all the different pieces laid out without a puzzle box to actually give you the direction that you need. However, with strong analysis, you can put together the pictures. So before we get into the details on how to succeed, let's talk about some common pitfalls and ways to fail at threat intel. So not understanding what threat intelligence is and how it can be leveraged within your organization. Not understanding the threat actors. Not understanding what motivates a threat actor to initiate a campaign against your organization. Why an organization might be targeted. Understanding the difference between being a target of opportunity and being the directed target. Automatically jumping to conclusions when you find the first piece of evidence. You see that IP address that comes out of Shanghai, automatically we think what? Adversaries in where? China. Not having the basic information security hygiene and practices in place. So before we start talking about doing threat intelligence, are we doing the basics of blocking and tackling? Do we have that basic common foundation to build on and be able to leverage? Just like other security practices, there is no silver bullet when it comes to threat intelligence. There are no turnkey solutions. There are no magic unicorns. So if anybody was coming here hoping for that answer today, I do apologize. There are none. Threat intelligence, like anything else, is comprised of people, processes, and technology. On the personnel side, you have a wide gambit of who you're going to actually be engaging with. It could be folks within a security operations center, network operations center, executives, business unit leaders, folks that have come from both a technical or a non-technical background. That's key when it comes to dealing with threat intelligence because it presents how you present the data to your audience is how they're going to consume it. So if you're talking a bunch of jargon to the executive C-suite, do you think they're going to understand that? Probably not, right? Doesn't go over well. From the process side, one of the key things to understand when we start talking about threat intelligence, and this is where we spend a lot of our time at Rendition helping executives understand, is the necessity for planning. We're going to talk a little bit about this later on, the need for being able to define what the intelligence requirements are. What is it as an executive or a business unit leader should I be concerned about that I need to know answers to in order to be able to make those business decisions? That will allow the analyst to go out and collect the information, process it, analyze that specific information. Does me no good to go out and analyze something that my executives are not concerned about. Technology. There are a lot of different technologies that can be applied for threat intelligence. Finding the one that best suits your organization, and what I tell a lot of organizations that are just stepping into threat intelligence, you don't need to spend millions of dollars doing this. There are a number of capabilities that you already have in-house that if you just start applying some basic processes and techniques, you can get that same information from your local systems. Or you can go out and make the capital expense and spend the money. Doesn't matter to Ed. Understanding the threat actors. When it comes to working within threat intelligence, you have multiple threat actors, ranging from the nation state all the way down to the lone gunman. These threat actors have a mission. They have an objective. And more importantly to understand, they also have consumers and customers on their end. Hence, they are sufficiently motivated to find a way to get what they want. On the other side of that, one of the key things that we like to drive home is you have zero influence over an adversary choosing to select and target you as an organization. Not all threats are equal. On the left, we see a pair of high-heeled shoes. Does anybody see that as a threat? And on the right, does anybody know who that is? Is it still too early in the morning? Anakin Skywalker. Is that a threat? Not yet. So the high-heeled shoes were actually created using a 3D printer to hide components used for a pen test. Corporate espionage. Held a TP link, could hold external hard drives, could access the network wirelessly and gain in. And of course, everybody knows what happened with Darth Vader. Not all threats are equal. Is this a threat? The Ashley Madison database dump. So last year we were working multiple investigations, and one of the things that we do is we look out for a number of our business partners that we look out for and help them when we see something like this. Because what happens normally following a high-profile data breach? Anyone? Anybody see something like this come in after that? We found your data on the Ashley Madison database. Pay us some Bitcoin and we'll keep it from getting public. So when this happened, we actually reached out to a number of our folks that had, it was approximately 17 organizations that had over 80 email addresses that were tied to their domain. Now, from a technical aspect, Ashley Madison did not do any verification on that email address. If you signed up with that email address, it automatically was tied to that account. I could go up and set it up as obama@whitehouse.gov, and I would be obama@whitehouse.gov for my login. There was no verification. 12 of the organizations had reached back out to us once we alerted them to this, and this was a small subset, that not only did they see the folks that we had identified, but they started seeing folks that were not in that original dump, senior leadership within their organization, start getting similar emails. This is something that once they had the information, they could take action on. So they started blocking those emails before they even hit the desktop. So again, combination of identifying threats in organizations and mining that data, getting that information to start putting together that puzzle. Pulling together information from public and open sources, vendor bulletins, flash reports from the FBI, alerts, and more importantly, your own logs. For successful threat analysis, you need to have those requirements. They have to be defined. What is it that I'm looking for to be able to provide you information on? You have to have definitive focus. You can't get pulled into a tangent and start down a rabbit hole. You need support. And this is going to come in the ways of staffing, training and education. It's going to come in the ways of management's reinforcement of what they want done by supporting you, making it a priority, understanding what threat intelligence is and how it's going to be applied within your organization. And most importantly, objectivity. You have to remain objective. You have to start with that blank slate. Just because the IP address says it's from China doesn't mean your adversary's in China. Developing and defining the requirements. And I like to use this letter, and this is a letter from George Washington to Colonel Dayton during the Revolutionary War. And one of the key things to pull out from it is General Washington is asking for very specific information. What kind of troops do they have? What kind of guards do they have? Are they focused? Are they 24/7 or are they working 8 to 5? What is their strength? Do they have 10? Do they have 15? Do they have 1,000? Again, very specific information that's being requested. This hasn't changed when it comes to threat intelligence. Because once you start having that, you can start framing out the picture. You can start putting together those pieces of the puzzle. Focus, finding those answers. You have to be able to focus in on those threats both at a high level and granular, being able to move between the two. Being able to answer the who, the where, the why, the what, and how from the defined intelligence requirements. Now, we talk about aggregating a lot of different information, processing it based upon your operating environment. The key point being the analysts. Once we get the information in, start funneling that down to what we call the actionable intelligence. Being able to take action, being able to make decisions, and how that's applied across tactical, operational, and strategic methods. Again, building out the rest of the puzzle. Focus starts bringing things into view. The support aspect, we hit on this a little bit earlier. You're going to need different types of support. You're going to need staffing. Threat intelligence just doesn't happen. You're going to need staff. You're going to need training and education. And sadly, when it comes to threat intelligence, there's only about 4 different organizations that offer training. Rendition will be offering training following the summit on threat intelligence fundamentals. You can also sign up for a SANS course or CREST. There's not very many of us out there. You're going to absolutely need budget. Infrastructure doesn't just become available. Well, unless you're in New Jersey and it comes off the back of a truck. But you're going to need money and funding either for training, for infrastructure, for staff resources, to be able to accomplish your mission. Now, you're not going to need a fully dedicated data center for threat intelligence, but you're going to need some definitive computing processing power. Getting into the understanding, being able to answer those questions for the executives, so that way you are staying on target. So, threat actors. Had to use the stock image because this is what all threat actors look like, right? Yeah, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this. So we'll talk about their motivations. You have the Hollywood romanticized hacker that doesn't actually exist. They're the ones that have the F5 macro on their keyboard that hacks into whatever agency they need to break into at the push of a button. You have your script kiddies. These are folks driven by curiosity, their ego. You have your lone gunmen, typically driven and motivated by financial gain. You have your hacktivists. They want to draw attention. They want recognition for their cause, what they're doing. Criminal syndicates. Typically motivated for financial gain. No big surprise. They want money. And then your nation states. Typically, they want a geopolitical edge. They want to gain a way to leverage that information for their own agenda, whether that's through cutting their research and development time on a product that's competing, or getting the latest and greatest dirt to negotiate in better strength during a talk with a competitor or a fellow nation state. Their capabilities will differ. So script kiddies, May have a homemade lab, some extra time on YouTube, Metasploit, social media. Lone gunmen, they tend to abuse their level of trust that's provided and granted to them. They'll have access to sensitive information, and as a result of abusing that trust, they're able to execute their goals. Again, typically for financial gain. Hacktivists. The sheer volume and numbers associated with some of these groups is what allows them to complete. They're crowdsourcing their efforts. Criminal syndicates, they're motivated, they have access to resources, they're investing in their infrastructure. In fact, if you want to go as far, if they were a legitimate business, they would be on the Fortune 500 list. They run very much so like a business. Nation states, again, motivated. They're developing resources internally, externally. They're pulling from different areas, and they have skilled staff. And then we'll get into the Hollywood romanticized hackers. These are the folks that when you watch them on TV, they're the combination of Yoda, Sheldon Cooper, Einstein, Isaac Newton, Stephen Hawking, which gladly gave us CSI Cyber. Objectivity in threat intelligence analysis. Stop jumping to conclusions. Looking at what information, what artifacts, what evidence, the facts that are available. And understanding that we have cognitive biases where we try to make sense out of chaos, which can take us down some pretty deep rabbit holes. So up here we've got 8 pictures. Anybody up here see a frog? Yes? No? Now? We have the skull, or we have the 2 girls sitting and playing. Which is it? Again, we attempt to put order to chaos. And it causes us to see things that may not necessarily be there, or miss things that are there. So when we talk about intelligence analysis, General Powell said it best. Tell me what you know, tell me what you don't, tell me the difference between the two. Or as I like to say it, why analysis really matters. Not that we would ever be put in that position, correct? So the way we do it is by leveraging some fundamental scientific theories and practices. Running through the scientific process to be able to ensure our objectivity, ensure that we're considering all the possible facts, considering different ways that things could be, so that way we make the best informed decision and provide that information up to our executives and our leadership. So we'll talk real quickly about 3 different types, but there's multiple different types of analysis methods when it comes to assessing data and information. Today we'll talk about the analysis of competing hypotheses, the diamond model for intrusion, and then social network analysis. The ACH model ensures that we focus on disproving any potential additional hypotheses. It was originally developed back in the 70s, and it was designed for the purpose of addressing problems with intuitive intelligence analysis, predominantly driven by human psychology. So again, pushing those personal cognitive biases, those way we inference things just because of the fact the IP address is from China, hence the adversary must be from China. We're forcing to relook at the information. We're forcing our analysts to go back and come up with other ways of what might be instead of just going off of face value. Because of the fact that reasoning is subjective, it forces heuristic psychology in order to prevent both cognitive and confirmation biases. Don't find a solution to the problem, find out what the problem is. So based upon evidence that you may get within an investigation, being able to compare those hypotheses of what may be driving and finding the one that has the least amount of inconsistencies based upon that hypothesis. These will run in from very inconsistent with a situation to very consistent with a situation. But as you can see, very limited evidence based upon multiple hypotheses. You can see with the number of least inconsistencies, it's probably in that one category over here on the left. Diamond model for intrusion analysis can be leveraged during and post intrusions. However, one of the key things to remember with the diamond model is it means you've pretty much been owned. That means you're working off of artifacts within your environment. And unless you're sharing information with other organizations to be able to pick up on some of those IOCs or some of those behaviors or tactics and techniques, may not be of as great benefit. So the way the diamond model works, the relationship between the victim and the adversary, infrastructure and the adversary's capability. Victim identifies some malware that identifies the capability of the adversary. Malware contains a command and control domain, which ties back to the adversary's infrastructure. The domain resolves to IP address. Again, this is going back to infrastructure. This provides information on how we can take action. So now if we know we have bad domains, bad IP addresses, we can take action on that. And ultimately, that provides information back pointing to the adversary. Social network analysis. Being able to identify clusters and networks of groups within an organization, within a subset of users, so that way we can identify what some of the commonalities are. Who's communicating to who, how they're communicating. How many of us have ever seen this before? Anybody know what this is? It's a raw TCP dump. Network traffic within an organization. We can pull information out of that as far as who's communicating if you have the proper instrumentation and sensors placement, who's communicating. But this right here doesn't buy us a lot of value, does it? A social network analysis can take this information and quickly visualize it. And as you can see, there's a number of systems internally, and this is within a user workspace, that are communicating internally. Now, should there ever be a necessity for a user's workstation to communicate with another user's workstation directly? No. That's bad, right? So, based upon some information that we were able to collect from a centralized logging system, we were able to identify the existence of a botnet that had started proliferating within the user's environment. Again, quick and dirty analysis to provide the information back to be able to take a decision. We need to remove these systems offline, re-image them. We don't clean systems, we wipe the drives. Trained staff. Threat intelligence analysts don't grow on trees. In fact, as it turns out, intelligence analysts develop their skills over years of time, not days. And if you're commercial sector, you're probably going to be best with finding somebody that's got 2 to 3 years experience in the threat intelligence area as a domain and profession. Threat intelligence analysts have to be able to focus on technical and non-technical threats. Because not all threats that come in are going to be, and I hate to use the term, cyber. A change in legislation, is that going to be a threat to an organization? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Analysts can quickly become overwhelmed, especially in the technical space. We're pulling data from multiple sources. We're getting inundated with information all the time. Anybody in here have an inbox that doesn't have at least 100 unread email messages right now? Yeah, okay, one. We get quickly inundated with information. So leveraging those challenges, again, we're overloaded. We have to address the quality of work. What's the quality of the information that we're going to get? Is it reliable? Is it relevant to our organization? Is it relevant to our intelligence requirements that our executives have given us? Or is it something that we can discard for the moment? Trust. Can we trust the information that we're getting? Would an adversary ever provide a false flag, a red herring, or attempt to deceive you in your process of trying to track them down? Maybe. And again, the necessity to keep that focus. By having these and overcoming the challenges and having the core skill sets, you again start to build out that additional picture of what you're trying to achieve. You're putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and you're being able to make a more well-informed decision instead of just making one and shooting from the hip. When it comes to threat intelligence products, again, we talked about the operational, the tactical, and the strategic application. We can talk to, at the executive level, strategic planning, what campaigns we're seeing. Is there a new spam campaign? Is there a new ransomware campaign that's going on? Has anybody had to deal with ransomware? Nobody? One, two? Okay, yeah, we're going to get a couple more people. If we can identify these campaigns early on and get out and prevent them from getting into our organizations, we've reduced the impact to our organizations, yes? You can gain that through threat intelligence. From the tactical side, we can put those access control lists in play. We can block domains. We can block that adversary infrastructure. We can keep that information and leverage it to again, protect and reduce the risk to the organization. From an operational side, once we get that information, we can start actively hunting for threats inside of our environment. Has the adversary already entered into our organization? Well, if we've got the right information, we can actively seek and hunt and find them. Again, continuing as a threat analyst to build out that picture, to build out that framework. I cannot stress the necessity of remaining objective when you're conducting your analysis. Challenge your initial thoughts, your initial theories. Don't just arbitrarily believe that just because you see this information, that that's going to be the end-all be-all. Because ultimately, you can't always blame these guys. In fact, has anybody in here ever been asked to attribute an attack for their organization? One, two. So if you have issues and you need somebody to blame, go out to whohackedus.com and it will provide you the information on who hacked you. Now this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but this goes back to the necessity for having intelligent analysis. Being able to focus in, being able to line up all the information, again, to make the best and most well-informed decision for the executives to be able to execute against. Oh, that didn't work quite well. Because just because you think you have the answers doesn't mean it's always going to be exactly what you think. So in closing, how to succeed. Again, sharing information, being able to drive out those requirements early on, the ability to remain objective based upon the evidence that you are seeing and you're witnessing, being able to understand what the motivations are of the relevant threat actors. Are you a target of opportunity? Are you the direct target? Being able to get that level of support from your organizations. These are going to be things that will help you succeed in threat intelligence analysis. Because ultimately, if you get a vendor who's just pushing a list of bad, they're really just the honey boo boo of threat intel. Lists of bad, indicators of compromise, hash sets are not threat intelligence. They just aren't. If a vendor is trying to push this onto you, I challenge you to ask them one question and one question alone. Why is this a threat to me? Why is this a threat to my organization? If the vendor can't answer that question, chances are the quality of their information, while it might look nice in the glossy report, lots of pie charts and bar graphs, if they can't answer why it's a threat to your organization, you have to question the quality of their analysis. If they're trying to put you and your organization into a cookie-cutter mold, it's not going to benefit you as greatly as you can if you actually do the analysis yourself. And that is it. Any questions? Comments? Rotten eggs? Tomatoes? No? No, that is Photoshop. That is Photoshop. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the conference. Make sure you swing by and thank Connie for all her work that she has done here. And have a good day.